morning and thanks for tuning in. You're watching All You Need to Know on Bloomberg Quint Live and I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines. Asian markets are off to a weak start after US President Donald Trump reignited trade war fears by saying he could impose more tariffs on Chinese imports if he wishes to. The Committee of Creditors for Jet Airways has allowed resolution professionals to invite expressions of interest from potential bidders. That's according to people in the know who have spoken to Bloomberg Quint. The spree of debt defaults continues as Suzlon Energy missed repayments of dollar-denominated bonds worth $172 million on Tuesday. Yes Bank's net profit may see a sharp decline in the first quarter owing to elevated provisions for stressed accounts. And in line with its peers, Wipro too may face margin pressures this time around, along with a subdued top-line growth. The company reports numbers post-market hours today. Let's start with a big development from overnight. The US President Donald Trump reminded everybody that the trade war is far from over. Speaking to reporters, Trump said that he may impose additional tariffs on Chinese imports if he wishes to. Let's listen to what he said first.
And we have a long way to go as far as tariffs with China is concerned if we want. We have another $325 billion that we can put a tariff on if we want. So we're talking to China about a deal, but I wish they didn't break the deal that we had.
Now, Trump's warning comes a day after Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said that trade talks with China may resume this week. Selina Wang of Bloomberg News brings you more.
Trump's comments really just confirmed the view in Beijing that already exists, that there's no clear pathway to a lasting deal. Of course, China wants the complete removal of tariffs for these discussions to continue, while the Trump administration has made it clear that tariffs will remain until they see evidence that China is keeping its promises. This also raises concerns in Beijing that Trump isn't in a rush to reach a deal ahead of the 2020 elections and that he may in fact drag it out to appear tough on China as he's campaigning. Now, if tariffs do continue to escalate, this would have a significant impact on the Chinese economy, with Bloomberg Economics forecasting that it could cause growth to fall below 6%. But Beijing is wary of these concerns, and we did just get statements from Premier Li Keqiang that if these tariffs do escalate, if protectionism continues to rise, they will adjust their fiscal and monetary policy as appropriate.
Selina, U.S. Treasury Department is reporting that China's holdings of treasuries dipped in May to the lowest level in 2 years. Does this tell us anything at all, or is there nothing to see here?
It's really hard to speculate on this data. There's a lot of opacity, but if you do look at the data, I want to take a look at this Bloomberg chart right now. You'll see that Treasury holdings have been on the steady decline for the past several years, and that this would be the third consecutive straight month of declines. Now, part of it is technicalities, China's ongoing efforts to diversify away from U.S. assets that have with it counterparty risks, hence why we've seen China increase its purchases of gold. There is also a consensus that China is not going to weaponize its U.S. Treasury holdings, as that would adversely impact China. It would adversely impact their exports. We've also heard from China's Securities and Regulatory Commission in January that China is not going to significantly cut holdings of U.S. Treasury, since China is still a saving surplus country. And it's a really difficult place to find another place besides the U.S. bond market to invest in that's as safe and as liquid.
Now, Trump's threats impacted the U.S. equity markets, which snapped a 5-day winning streak. The S&P 500 ended lower from its record highs, while tech shares led the losses on antitrust violations. Ranita Young of Bloomberg News brings you the complete wrap of Tuesday's session on Wall Street.
U.S. markets fluctuated during Tuesday's session, but closed lower as the S&P 500 came down from a record high, all happening after U.S. President Donald Trump said that he could still impose tariffs on Chinese goods. This did nothing but remind investors that the U.S.-China trade spat is still unresolved. Now, we are still in corporate earnings season, and we saw Goldman Sachs posting better than expected earnings, shares rising on that news. Wintrust Financial, however, posted disappointing earnings, shares falling to the lowest since around March 2017. And we also know that the technology industry was roiled today during a congressional hearing on antitrust violations that happened within the tech industry on Capitol Hill. Now, meanwhile, we did see some U.S. U.S. data post positive returns. U.S. retail sales posting a broad gain in June, and we also saw U.S. factory output climbing in the latest month, and we saw U.S. home builder and sentiment better than expected. Meanwhile, treasuries fell and the U.S. dollar did rise versus major currency competitors. And that's a look at your Tuesday Wall Street action. In New York, I'm Renita Young for Bloomberg News.
Right, let's turn to the Asian markets, where I can see a broad swath of red this morning. I'm joined live by Rosalind Chin from the Hong Kong studios. Good morning, Rosalind. To take a closer look at the Asian markets, are they going along the same lines as the U.S. markets overnight?
Yes, well, in this environment we're in right now, with this trade war brewing and continuing through this year, there's feeling of uncertainty is never really that far away, and certainly it is back again today, that after Trump made comments saying that he could impose more tariffs on China if he wants. And this coming even as we know that the Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin and also the Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer are expected to be speaking with China again, even with a view possibly to visiting Beijing for further talks. But Trump's words are, of course, impacting the markets here. We've got the MSCI Asia Pacific down about 0.25%, and largely, as you mentioned, across the board, we are seeing swathes of red right now. We saw the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index open lower. It is now trading down by more than 0.5%. The Shanghai Composite and the CSI 300 actually trading down just over 1% lower. And the Nikkei 225 and the Tropics also both lower as well. These export-driven economies like Japan, like Korea, taking a hit. Of course, those stocks taking a hit today from those comments as well. In Korea, we've got tech stocks like Samsung and also SK Hynix losing on the back of that. The Topic's losing now for 6 out of 7 sessions. The Nikkei, of course, also trading lower, this time by about 0.2%. Australia is one of the bright spots today. That's up by 0.4%. We've got some output results, numbers coming out from some of the big resource companies there today. We had numbers from BHP Billiton. BHP Billiton is making gains right now, up by nearly 1.4%, among the biggest gainers on the ASX 200 after forecasting a rebound of as much as 6% in iron ore production this financial year. Rival Rio Tinto had its results out, it had its production numbers out yesterday, and that right now is gaining 0.6%, making a bit of a comeback today. Overall, a bit of a cheerier feeling, a bit of a cheerier mood in Australia than in the rest of the market. Back to you.
Thanks so much for that, Rosalind. Let's talk about the Bitcoin now. It has once again fallen below the $10,000 mark, only 3 weeks after breaching that point for the first time in more than a year. And speaking about cryptocurrencies, senators from both sides in the US grilled Facebook over its proposed cryptocurrency, the Libra. Lawmakers said that Facebook may not intend to be dangerous, but it appears to be behaving like a toddler with matches. Caitlin Weber of Bloomberg News brings you more.
Fair to say that Facebook really got a grilling today, as we just heard. They took a lot of heat, not just over this idea to have the Libra cryptocurrency, but lawmakers took the opportunity to really take Facebook to task for a number of other controversies, including the recent concerns about privacy that we saw in the recent settlement with the FTC. There were also a lot of criticism raised about Facebook's alleged lack of willingness to regulate better the content on its platform. So Facebook, the Facebook executive, David Marcus, who spoke today, he was hoping to sort of pitch Libra, really took a big grilling from these lawmakers who have shown that they really do distrust the company at this point.
Caitlin, Facebook also took some heat along with Apple, Google and Amazon. This was at a different hearing, that one focusing on whether the tech giants are too big. So how were executives from those companies received?
Yes, this was on the other side of the Capitol and on the House. Those tech executives similarly took a lot of heat from lawmakers. Democrats may have been more pointed in their criticism of these companies, saying that they are too large, that their size doesn't allow smaller companies to compete. I think all the firms that have appeared took heat, but I would say that Amazon seemed to take the most. A lot of the lawmakers said that there just really wasn't, because Amazon sells its own products and owns a platform, so that there's just really is a conflict of interest there and not an opportunity for smaller companies to compete. Republicans, for their part, were maybe a little less pointed. Some of them calling for Congress and regulators to take it more slowly, that big business isn't necessarily bad business.
Right. All different, very difficult questions to be asked. We'll see how that pans out. For now, let's turn to the Indian markets. Agam Vakil is here to tell you all about the day's trade and what's happening in the futures and options space. Agam, well, it all turns on one man's statement as of now, and that seems to be the case in the Asian markets. How are we looking, though?
Let's wait and watch, Alex. It's a case of consolidation, as we have seen over the past few days. And, we are very likely to see that play out for us in the start as well. The SGX Nifty indicating a marginally negative movement for now, negative opening for now. Currently, the SGX Nifty is at 11,600. We have seen the Nifty advance by around 0.5%, well over 0.5% actually. So it was a good day of trade, despite the fact there was a very quiet first half to the trading session and outperformance from the mid-cap index. Good gains coming in the PSU banking index too, up 1.5%. In terms of your ADRs for now, Tata Motors looking at another up move around 4.5%. Of course, do remember it has secured a loan guarantee of $500 million for electric cars. Of course, in this we're talking about GLR. But other than that, we don't have too much movement in other ADRs. But your fund flows, we have seen FIs continue to sell once again on a net basis, about 445 odd crores moving out. DIs on the other hand buying a stock worth 638 crores. And in terms of contributors, we did have Reliance Industries, L&T and Axis Bank advance and provide some sort of support and some sort of lift to the Nifty. But as far as futures and options go, what we're keeping an eye on is a decline of around 1.3% in open interest for the Nifty futures, and the Nifty banking futures are looking at the Nifty banking futures should come up. And there you have it. That's also looking at 3% decline there. As far as the open interest is concerned, again, we don't have too much movement on the higher end. It's very clearly the 12,000 call, which has the maximum open interest. On the lower end, it is, a little bit of a battle between 11,300, 11,500. But as far as change in OI goes, again, it's 11,600 put, which did see a lot of writing in open interest. Of course, do remember we also saw the Nifty move up about that. But your VIX has fallen off even further, now at around 11.5. Now there are a lot of traders who are suggesting that this is getting a little too comfortable. Can we expect a little more volatility now? That's the real question here. The put call ratio as well is at around 1.3. Of course, edged up higher since the Nifty also moved up higher. And in terms of stocks, we are watching out for those stocks which are in the F&O band, which includes IDBI Bank, Reliance Capital and Reliance Infra. Do remember we did see a lot of unwinding in Diwan Housing Finance yesterday, which is why it's out of the band. Let's wait and watch how the stock does. Besides that, we have Just Dial, Torrent Pharma and MCX looking at substantial increase in open interest in terms of those stocks which saw unwinding. RBL, Equitas Holding and Manappuram Finance. So we'll be watching out for that, along with a few names which came out with earnings, Alex.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Agam.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what's making headlines across the globe. Yvonne Mann of Bloomberg News brings you the first word headlines.
The House of Representatives has voted to condemn President Trump for tweets about 4 Democrats that told them to go back to the countries they originally came from. The 240 to 187 vote backed a resolution that condemned that comments as racist and said that they, quote, legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color. Trump said his tweets were not racist and called the vote a Democrat con game. South Korea is again urging Japan to negotiate over its block on tech exports to Seoul, despite the Abe government saying there's nothing to discuss. The spat threatens to spiral further out of control, with Seoul saying it will strongly resist the ban, and Tokyo threatening further action if any Japanese assets in Korea are affected. Both sides say mutual trust has been badly damaged. South Korean prosecutors, meanwhile, are seeking an arrest warrant for the CEO of Samsung Biologics. Yonhap News says Kim Tae-han is accused of violating laws related to capital markets and external audit. It's the second time prosecutors have sought Kim's arrest. A court rejected a first request in May. Kim has previously said the company's accounting methods are in line with international standards. And the German Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen has been confirmed as the new president of the European Commission. She's the first woman to hold the job, and it's only the second time in EU history that a German has been in the role. She told lawmakers that the most pressing issue at the moment is climate change and that she would seek to bolster relations with the U.S. And those were your first word headlines.
In major corporate news back home, lenders to Jet Airways will now attempt to sell its assets part by part. Remember, the airline was admitted under insolvency after the lenders were unable to find a strategic investor. Now the committee of creditors will call for expressions of interest for the assets that are left with Jet. I'm joined live by Vishwanath Nair on the phone line. Vishy, you've been looking at this case right from the onset. What are these assets that we're talking about? I would assume that they're not very substantial, but if you've tabulated the numbers, how much possibly could be recovered at this stage?
Right. So there is at this stage, the lenders have met. What they have decided is that they're going to call expressions of interest by the end of this week. And probably over the course of the next month, they will be holding negotiations with interested buyers. But just want to correct, the idea is not to sell assets part by part. This is an insolvency proceeding. So first you attempt to sell the company, and if the company does not get sold, or if bidders are not coming up front within the 270-day deadline, then you start ripping the assets apart and then selling them under liquidation. So at this stage, neither the lenders nor the people who are conducting the entire insolvency proceedings are sure how much they're likely to recover. But one thing is clear, that the lenders in India at least are owed nearly 10,000 crore. So they will want to recover as much as possible. Public sector banks alone have about 4,400 crore worth of exposure to Jet Airways. So, the aim will be to recover as much of this money as possible.
Thanks so much for that, Vishy. Let's move on to another story. Suzlon Energy has defaulted on loan repayment worth $172 million. The wind turbine maker, which is struggling with its debt pile, says it's working on a holistic solution to the problem. Anurag Joshi of Bloomberg News reports.
Suzlon Energy said it missed repayment of $172 million principal on its convertible notes that fell due on Tuesday. Suzlon's non-payment on the notes comes amid a spate of defaults and downgrades in India's credit markets that started with the IL&FS crisis last year. Some traders are pinning hope that proposed acquisition by Brookfield may help the company tide over some of its problems. For the moment, it remains to be seen what kind of a restructuring plan Suzlon works out for the bond investors.
Wipro is expected to report a weak set of numbers for the June quarter. Top line may remain subdued in addition to margin pressure like that faced by its peers. Agam Vakil is here now to tell you all about the key numbers to watch out for. Agam, over to you.
Right, Alex. As you've already mentioned, we are expecting weak earnings. Let's start with IT service revenues. In fact, in terms of rupee revenues, we're expecting a decline of around 2%. Similarly, margins could contract to 16.8% against 17.8%, not unlike what we have been used to for other Indian IT companies, and profits could consequently also see a decline of around 6.7% quarter on quarter. Now, in terms of the revenues, we do know that Workday has been divested, which will have a little bit of a gap when it comes to revenues, and that is one major reason why we are expecting a little bit of a decline coming through. On a constant currency basis, however, Wipro could very well be flat and actually see a little bit of growth to the tune of around 0.5% according to various reports that we have gone through. Now, we are expecting Wipro to guide for around 0.5 to 2.5% as far as the second quarter of this financial year is concerned in terms of constant currency currency growth for its IT service revenues. Now, of course, in this particular quarter, where we are largely expecting Wipro to stay in its guided range of around -1 to 1%. So let's wait and watch out for that. Of course, when I say -1 to 1%, it is once again in constant currency growth. So we'll see how that pans out for Wipro. In terms of margins, as we have seen in case of TCS and Infosys, it will be on account of wage hikes taken, higher visa fees, as well as an adverse rupee, which will bear down on margins. But we must remember that it's also seen better pricing, and that could, to a certain extent, well, cushion the contraction in margins. Finally, we're keeping an eye on outlook on financial services. We must remember that it's been a very, very mixed when it comes to queues coming in from Accenture, TCS and Infosys. So Wipro, we'll have to see as to how this particular vertical has panned out for it. And we're also keeping an eye on demand on other verticals like healthcare and communications. And of course, sustainability of margins from here on will also be key watchable as far as Wipro goes.
Thanks so much for that, Agam. Sticking with earnings, Yes Bank may report a sharp decline in profit for the first quarter as the private sector lender continues to provide for stressed assets. Shifali Malik tells us what to watch out for.
Number 4, Yes Bank is expected to come in at about 2,477 crore rupees. That's expected to be a growth of about 11.6%, and profit is seen at about 201 crore rupees. That'll be against 1,260 in the same quarter last year, a degrowth of about 84%, and against a loss of about 1,506 crore rupees in the fourth quarter FY19. Now, there are brokerages who are still expecting a loss to come in this particular quarter as well. Operationally as well, it's expected to be a weak quarter with pre-provisioning operating profit growth expected to come in at about 1,452 crore rupees. That'll be down by about 40% on a YOY basis. And asset quality, of course, will be the key thing to look forward to in Yes Bank earnings after the dismal or the shocking set of earnings that they put out in the fourth quarter. And the 10,000 crore rupees watch list number that has been haunting the management, that'll be the key thing to look forward to. How has been the performance of those assets coming in this particular category? Provisioning for obvious reasons could remain elevated at the management. Management might be making elevated provisioning for some of these stressed accounts. And IL&FS exposure stood at about 2,530 crore rupees for them. Until Q4, they had a coverage of about 25% against the same. So in this quarter, they could increase that percentage. We can also expect MTM losses to come in on the stressed corporate bond portfolio. So that'll also be important to look forward to. Absolute numbers, one of the brokerages, Philip Capital, is putting out an absolute number to gross NPAs, which is expected to come in at about 3.9% versus 3.22% on a sequential basis. And slippages are expected to be anywhere in the range of 500 to 4,000 odd crore rupees. So a very wide range of numbers being put out across brokerages. And other than that, we can expect weak fee income to come in for Yes Bank, and margins are also expected to be under pressure. And management commentary on their plans to raise funds going forward, that will also be something very important to look forward to.
All right, we've already spoken about a couple of stocks that you have to watch out for in trade today. Mishika Parak is joining in to tell you all about the stocks in news. Morning, Mishika. What's on your list today?
Good morning, Alex. There are a number of quarterly numbers that we need to look at today. The first one's DCB Bank. The results were below estimates. The net interest income was up 12% at 305 crore rupees, whereas the estimates were 313 crores. The net profits are up 17% at 81 crores. Again, estimates were 95 crores. And provisions are up 22% at 41 crore rupees. The GNPA stands at 1.96% versus 1.84% quarter on quarter. And NNPA stands at 0.81% versus 0.65% quarter on quarter. Now, these slippages rose due to agriculture and commercial vehicle segments, and the management has maintained its stance of doubling of loan book in about 3.5 years. But they've said that they will not compromise on the asset quality to achieve this guidance, and have also made an offer to Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank to acquire the business of customers in India. The next set of numbers are coming in from MCX. The revenues are up 9%, EBITDA is up 11%, margins stand at 34.8% versus 34.3%. The net profit is up 6 times on account of higher other income, lower tax and exceptional loss in the base quarter. Now, Morgan Stanley says that the revenues were in line with their expectations. Then we have 5 Paisa Capital's quarterly results. The revenues are up 2.5 times at 23 crores versus 9 crores. Net loss of 0.5 crores versus a net loss of 6 crores. And the board has approved rights issue at 1:1 for rupees 80 per share, aggregating to 102 crore rupees. Now let's look at some stocks. Cox & Kings has defaulted on payment of commercial papers worth 45 crores, which were due on July 16th. KNR Constructions have received a work order of 847 crores from Navyug Engineering for an irrigation project. And lastly, we have Sadbhav Infra Projects. The Q1 toll revenues up 2.3% at 281 crores versus 275 crores from its 10 operational special purpose vehicles.
Thanks so much for that, Mishika. Unfortunate news in Mumbai. 7 people were killed after a 4-storied residential building collapsed yesterday in South Mumbai's congested Dongri area, trapping over 40 people under the debris. That's according to the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation. Take a look.
के नियम के अनुसार उसके लिए रीडेवलपमेंट के लिए वहाँ पर एक विकासक को डेवलपर को अपॉइंट भी किया था और उसके लिए उनको परमिशन भी मिली थी, लेकिन ये डेवलपर ने उसको समय पर डेवलप किया या नहीं किया, ये सारी चीज़ें अब जांच में सामने आएगी।
Right, let's talk about some of the stories you'll find if you look up the website bloombergquint.com this morning. First up, in his last AGM as chairman, Azim Premji of Wipro identified 4 areas that will be key to the firm's growth. He said digital technologies, cloud computing, engineering services and cyber security will lead Wipro into the future at a time of rapid change. He will step down as executive chairman and managing director on the 30th of July, making way for his son Rishad to take over. Premji will continue to serve on Wipro's board though as founder chairman and non-executive director. In other news, Facebook is moving a step closer to launching its long-delayed WhatsApp payments service in India after wrapping up an audit of related data practices, according to people familiar with the matter. This is a Bloomberg story. The payments offering has been in beta mode in India since early 2018 for 1 million users, but the nationwide debut has been delayed, in part because of government regulations. WhatsApp is required to show a third party or auditor that all the data involved in payments will be stored on servers only in India. WhatsApp is currently preparing to submit the report for approval to India's banking regulator, that is the Reserve Bank of India. That's all you need to know going to trade today. Do stay tuned. There's a lot more coming up in just a short while. This is Bloomberg Quint.